On the 13th day of May, members of Parliament are on the receiving end. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission says it will not bow to pressure to increase salaries for members of Parliament.
Well, the Commission says the country's economy cannot afford the salary demands by the members of Parliament. The Commission says the decision to pay members of Parliament at least 500,000 shillings every month was reached after extensive consultation and comparison with other economies around the world.
In fact, the Commission says the Kenyan lawmakers remain one of the best remunerated lot in the world. It is for this reason that the Commission says the MPs will not get any pay rise.
So what next for the members of Parliament? The legislators have filed a petition seeking to sack the Salaries Commissioners, whom they accuse of violating the Constitution by slicing their salaries from a world record high of close to $1 million shillings a month. These and other stories lined up for you. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the program. I'm Eric Zoka.
Many thanks for joining us. I'm Linda Gutu. Let's take a look at the highlights.
This is not the time for upward review of remuneration and benefits for any public servant.
You deserve nothing more, SRC tells members of Parliament on their salary demands.
Deadlock over 2 cabinet nominees as the Appointments Committee consolidates its report.
War on insecurity. Government to recruit 10,000 additional police officers.
And still in this bulletin, panic as 40 mentally ill patients escape from Mathare mental institution.
Well, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has dismissed calls by members of Parliament for an upward review of their salaries, saying the current pay structure will remain.
Through its chair, Sarah Serem, the salaries team revealed that 54% of the national revenue goes into paying public servant salaries and therefore putting a strain on development projects. KTN's Catherine Omanto reports on the Commission's resolve to remain firm.
We are an independent commission and we are subject to no other direction other than the direction and the authority of the Constitution.
And she will not budge on the salary scale of the members of Parliament.
We therefore strongly believe that under the prevailing circumstances of low revenue collection, natural disasters, the level of poverty index, which we all know, where so many are earning below less than 100 shillings per day, this is not the time for upward review of remuneration and benefits for any public servant.
Members of Parliament will continue to earn 530,000 shillings and not the 800,000 shillings the previous members of Parliament were earning. This, according to Sarah Serem, is because members of the 11th Parliament are on a new contract.
We haven't reviewed any salary downward, because when I started off, I did mention that the current structure, the current Parliament and the state officers that we are dealing with as SRC are new state officers under the new Constitution. We went out to set salaries for those new state officers. So there was no question of downgrading any position other than paying them the worth as determined by the job evaluation.
There were claims that the SRC just took the amount of money it cost to pay MPs in the 10th Parliament and divided that amount of money by the number of MPs there are in the 11th Parliament to arrive at 530,000 shillings as payment to every MP in the current Parliament. But Sarah says the process was much more complicated than that, and it wasn't just a matter of simple multiplication and division.
We had to go to a benchmark both within advanced countries and came up with the region, and even had a consultant from World Bank that also helped us through the whole process. So it wasn't a simple basic mathematics that we saw. It was a surprise for us, and that was a simple, pure coincidence. We actually congratulate the person that came up with that, because that must be a very good statistician or mathematician.
A motion seeking to sack members of the Salaries Commission has been tabled in Parliament. The members of Parliament claim that the Commission has violated the Constitution in seeking to 'to slice their salaries. Catherine Omwanto, KTN.
Well, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has dismissed calls by members of Parliament for an upward review of their salaries, saying the current pay structure will remain. Through its chair, Sarah Serem, the Salaries team revealed that 54% of the national revenue goes into paying public servant salaries and therefore putting a strain on development projects. KTN's Catherine Omanto reports on the Commission's resolve to remain firm.
And still in this bulletin, panic as 40 mentally ill patients escape from Mathare mental institution.
War on insecurity. Government to recruit 10,000 additional police officers. Well, let's discuss that story by Catherine Omwanto a little bit further. And Professor Gitile Naituli, who is an economist and also a lecturer at the Multimedia University right here in Nairobi, joins us live on KTN just to discuss what we had there. Sarah Serem coming very strong on MPs and actually being adamant, actually the whole team being adamant about this. Thank you very much for joining us on KTN. And looking at this, what she said after, the members of Parliament outcry saying that they want their salaries to be, hiked. She says that we cannot sustain the economy. We cannot sustain the higher salaries due to low revenue allocation and also what she says natural disasters. Looking at this, what are we missing out?
You're not missing out anything. She is very right. It's not possible for this economy to sustain inflated salary, because inflated salary makes it impossible for the low earners to survive within the economy, because we are operating within the same economy. So an inflated salary is dangerous to the country. In fact, what these people are asking is a crime against the people of Kenya.
Okay.
They cannot be allowed.
You as an economist, looking at the GDP right now, which stands in Kenya, can we fit the bill?
We can. The salary is supposed to be 20% of GDP, and ours right now is in excess of that. So we simply can't afford it. Yeah.
Sarem says that currently, looking at what she said there, the current public servants currently stood at 700,000 shillings. They're demanding 500,000 shillings. Remember, we have members of parliament, we have county representatives, we have senators who want their salaries to be hiked, totaling to at least 600 people who want their salaries to be hiked. Is this even fair for the public?
No, it's not fair, and it's not just that. He wants to increase for the MPs. The other workers also want theirs pulled up, and that means inflation. So it's not fair, and it's not sustainable. What we need is to figure out how to sustain this economy. What I also think Sarah needs to do, though, with our team, is to go back and harmonize salaries of everybody who draws money from consolidated fund. Every civil servant, anybody who gets paid by the public, to harmonize those salaries, and most of those also will have to come down, just like the MP salaries came down. That way we are able to save money for investment, because right now we are concentrating on the current consumption, and it's very bad, because we can't sustain it. It's not sustainable. You look at our neighbors. Ethiopia is the fastest growing country right now in Africa, almost. Okay? But look what they pay. For example, the vice chancellor of a university in Ethiopia earns $500. All allowances included, $500. Compare that with over $10,000, $7,000 for us. So she need to go back. They need to harmonize salaries of the entire civil service, including the parastatals. There are parastatals which are graded. And if you are working in parastatal grade A, you have higher salary than somebody working in grade C. That should not happen.
You are comparing, and this is the last question, you're comparing Kenya to a country like Malaysia, saying that we need to emulate what Malaysia does. Yeah. They look at the people who are serving the public and they compare their status with their education status, and that's how they pay them. If you can briefly talk to us about that and what we need to do as a country.
Actually, what the Malaysians did was to find an objective measure of compensation. And therefore, they tied the compensation with the previous investment, which is investment in education. Yeah. So the clustered degree program, for example, they say if you have a diploma in engineering, diploma in medicine, this is your salary regardless of where you are working within the public service. Okay? Now, because that is so objective, it's not possible for people to argue with an objective measure. Maybe even though they arrived at the current structure with the extensive consultation, they may actually have to go back and tie compensation with investment in education, individual investment, so that they can completely fix this problem, because the problem is big and they need to be arrested now if we have to move forward. Yeah.
We have to end this interview now, but one word, do you think that what they're saying or what the members of parliament want, anyone who voted them in can really accept?
I doubt that. In fact, I think what we need to do is go back to wherever they elected from, and then we ask those who elected them if they would like them to be increased, and they will tell you, I have 1 million is good money.
Not reasonable.
In the current, it's very reasonable in the current economy.
Okay.
500,000 is good enough.
Good enough.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Gitile Naitwili.
Yes.
He's an economist telling us, or just, basically giving us a detail of what the Sarah Salem led commission said today, and said adamantly that they're really not going to give in to the members of parliament demands. Thank you very much for joining us. Moving on to the vetting of cabinet secretaries now, and several members of the Parliamentary Committee on Appointments are recommending the rejection of Phyllis Kandie. Kandie had been nominated to the East African Affairs, Commerce and Tourism docket, but most members believe she is not competent. The committee had to go into caucus meetings earlier in the day to try and build consensus on Kandie and another nominee, Davis Chilchir. The deadline for the tabling of the committee's report before Parliament expires tomorrow afternoon. Rita Tinina has more.
With the Tuesday deadline for the tabling of the report on the 16 cabinet secretary nominees before Parliament just hours away, the Parliamentary Committee on Appointments meeting at the Windsor Golf and Country Club Hotel raced against time to conclude its report. But it was not all smooth sailing. Sources tell KTN that the committee was divided on the performance of Phyllis Kandie, the nominee for East African Affairs, Commerce and Tourism, during the vetting process. Despite her impressive academic credentials, some committee members felt that she was not convincing enough on her competencies to handle the crucial docket. Sharp divisions are also said to have emerged on the Energy and Petroleum docket nominee Davis Chilchir, with integrity questions being raised about him. Some CORD MPs, sources say, also raised concerns over the role Chilchir, a former commissioner with the now defunct Interim Independent Electoral Commission, played in the March general election. The divisions saw the committee move into caucuses, with CORD and Jubilee MPs meeting separately to try and build consensus. The differences over the nominees emerged as the committee chair defended the committee over criticism that the vetting exercise was a mere formality.
A nominee has not committed any crime before the committee to require that they be embarrassed through being asked questions that have no bearing on their suitability or otherwise.
The committee's report, which will contain recommendations on the 16 nominees, is expected to be tabled before Parliament Tuesday afternoon for MPs to either approve or reject the President's choice of cabinet secretaries. According to the law, the report should be tabled before the House within 14 days after submission of the names of nominees to Parliament by the President. That 14-day deadline expires on Tuesday afternoon.
If Parliament does not reject any of the 16 nominees by tomorrow, which is the deadline, then the nominees will stand appointed. They will be deemed to have been appointed into cabinet.
The compiling of the report followed 3 days of vetting of the 16 nominees. It is the first time in the country that cabinet secretaries are being subjected to public vetting and parliamentary approval. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Lots of expectations with the vetting process. Of course, Rita Tinina there reporting, and that story leads us to a big question tonight. And we ask you, did the vetting process of cabinet nominees meet your expectations? What did you expect? What did you see? Let us know your opinion. Send your answer with plus a brief comment to the number 8040. Of course, we will be sampling some of your views at the tail end of this bulletin. You're watching KTN Prime, and we thank you for staying with us this far. Now, the government is well on its way to recruit 10,000 more police officers in a bid to curb insecurity in the country. Deputy President William Ruto revealed this today when he met the Independent Police Oversight Authority. This move comes hot on the heels of pressure on the government to bolster security in the country. KTN's Betty Chalo with the details.
During the meeting, Deputy President William Ruto revealed that his office is in talks with Treasury to hire an additional 10,000 police officers to give impetus to the war against insecurity in the country. Ruto also announced plans by the government to hire up to 1,300 vehicles to cater for movement of police officers when responding to distress calls. The move comes a day after the Inspector General of Police, David Kimayo, gave a 3-day grace period for Mandera residents to voluntarily surrender illegal firearms.
We have actually been informed that quite a number of the communities have harmed themselves, both communities living here, with illicit small arms and light weapons. And they have some semblance of malicious group that they are protecting the two of the clans, each of the two clans. And therefore, we have given an ultimatum.
However, reports reaching KTN indicate that no one has since heeded to that call. According to Mandera County Commissioner Michael Tialal, residents still have 2 more days to surrender their firearms, failure to which the government will use force to disarm those in possession of illegal firearms on Thursday. Further reports from Mandera indicate that normalcy is slowly returning to the region, with many residents making their way back home where they fled during the attacks. Administration police in the area have since intensified their day and nighttime patrols in efforts to enforce peace. Betty Kialo, KTN Prime.
Now, in what can be interpreted as damage control measures, the Attorney General Githu Muigai is tonight traveling to The Hague to have a meeting with ICC top officials, including the court's president and the prosecutor.
The Wednesday morning appointment between Kenya's government legal advisor and ICC president is to quell an already agitated ICC court following a letter to the UN Security Council by Kenya's envoy to the UN asking the United Nations to intervene and have Kenya's cases at The Hague thrown out. Aaron Ochieng has more details.
According to a source at the State Law Office, the Attorney General, Professor Githu Muigai, is traveling to the International Criminal Court headquarters in The Hague, where he will have a meeting with the President of the court, Sang Hyung Song, and the prosecution office led by Fatou Bensouda. A controversial letter written to the UN Secretary Council by Kenya's ambassador to the UN, Macharia Kamau, which called on the UN to intervene and have the cases facing President Uhuru Kenyatta, his deputy William Ruto, and journalist Joshua Sang terminated immediately, has necessitated the meeting. The letter by Ambassador Macharia has received condemnation from the ICC, and part of Professor Muigai's mission in The Hague will be to convince the office of the prosecutor and the ICC president that Kenya is still willing to cooperate with the court until the conclusion of the cases. Kenya, being a signatory of the Rome Statute, is mandated to cooperate with ICC, failure to which the court may issue arrest warrants for the suspects. The Wednesday meeting will take place just a day after a scheduled status conference that will re-evaluate the circumstances of the case facing Deputy President William Ruto and journalist Joshua Sang. Ruto had requested the court to postpone the start of his trial until November this year, citing his commitments in the country after winning the election. The status conference will be held on Tuesday. The prosecution will also be tasked tomorrow to convince the judges that a strong case still exists against Ruto after the withdrawal of key witnesses that were to testify against the deputy president and the journalist. The latest witness to withdraw his statement had earlier told the court that he attended a meeting at Ruto's home in Tarbo, Uasin Gishu County, where plans were laid for attacks before the 2007 election. That evidence has now been thrown out. Aaron Ochieng, KTN.
All right, so the Joint Admission Board, or if you like JAB, has released new university admission cutoff points for students who sought for the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education in 2012. And looking at the Super Bowl, this is how the board intends to distribute the number of students supposed to join the universities this year. And the university slots, as you can see on the Super Bowl there, last year, that is in 2012, the number of students who sat for the KCSE examinations stood at nearly 500,000. The number is there, 436,349 were registered to sit for the KCSE. 53,000 of these registered students will be admitted to public universities this year, that is in 2013, and 383,339 will miss the cutoff mark points. Well, if you look at the cutoff marks on the next board here, this is what the Joint Admissions Board is saying, that admission, if those who qualify to be admitted to public schools must have attained B or 61 points and above. Now, there is a special consideration for females who have a B with 60 points and also a B minus with 59 points there. Looking at the allocations and top 5 allocations in the sports or slots, if you like, in the university, Moi University tops the list with 5,861 students. Kenyatta University has 5,566 students who will be admitted there. University of Nairobi has 5,387. Egerton University has 3,443 students who will be admitted this year. Maseno University has 3,040 students who will be admitted this year. Looking at the bottom 5 here, university allocations there. Kabianga University has 405 students who will likely to be admitted this year. Embu University has 393 students. Cooperative University has 393 students there. Kirinyaga University, 319 students. And lastly here, Moranga University has 241 students there. Now, the board also announced that 2,794 girls would be admitted to universities due to affirmative action. This affirmative action is special needs, if you like, and another 94 students from purely arid lands will also join the institutions for higher learning. Let's now remind you the big question of the day here. Did the vetting process of the cabinet nominees meet your expectations? I repeat the question again. Did the vetting process of the cabinet nominees meet your expectations? Send your yes or no response to the number 8040. Please begin with your name and location, and we'll sample your views at the tail end of this live newscast. You are indeed watching KTN Prime, and just ahead.
KTN Business Today. What is the value of concession? The cabinet nominee on transport and infrastructure reveals. Also, a 9th microfinance institution makes its way into the Kenyan market. Join me, Joy Doreen Bira, on this edition of KTN Business.
Welcome back. Now, the Kenya National Union of Teachers says it will call on its members to down their tools to protest government's failure to reinstate teachers' allowances.
NAT says a mediator appointed by the Ministry of Labour to help in solving the dispute between NAT and the Teachers Service Commission has not succeeded.
At the same time, NAT wants Treasury to review the education budget presented for the year 2013-2014, saying it is not sufficient.
We must not be seen like we are asking things which are not ours. This is something negotiated, agreed upon, and needs implementation. It was factored in our proposal in the budget making.
It is only when you are on strike that they behave. But at this time, we want to be accountable to Kenyans and to raise these facts early in advance, so that when the inevitable come at the right time, then nobody should blame us. We are under duty as a union to protect quality public education and also to stand for what is rightly due for the teachers of Kenya.
In other news, making headlines across the country, panic grips Mathare as 40 mentally ill patients from Mathare Mental Hospital escape. And in Nairobi, a Transition Authority coordinator is shot dead by criminals. This and more in a News in Brief segment.
A Transition Authority officer was today killed in Tena Estate, Nairobi. The motive of the killing is still unclear, as the gangs did not steal anything from the victim. Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero has raised concern over increasing insecurity in the city. In Mombasa County, a middle-aged woman was this morning charged with assault.
The woman allegedly burnt her 10-year-old boy's hands after he took 5,000 shillings from his aunt. The incident, which took place last year, has since left the boy unable to use his hands effectively and is appealing to well-wishers to support him to undergo corrective surgery. Still in Mombasa County, 13 people were arraigned in a Mombasa court and charged with participating in unlawful oath-taking. The 13 are said to have undergone the oath to join Mombasa Republican Council. One suspect, Ali Hamisi, was separately charged for administering the oath. 12 of the suspects were freed on a 50,000 shillings bond. The administrator of the oath was, however, remanded as investigations continue. And here in Nairobi, police have launched a manhunt for 40 mentally ill patients who escaped from the Mathare Mental Hospital. The 40 are said to have broken out of their wards on Sunday evening. Tension is high in Mathare and its environs as the search for the 40 continues. Finally, a 50-year-old deputy director in a non-governmental organization was arraigned in court together with her son for being in possession of 19 kilograms of elephant tusks. Susan Soila and her son Robert Ntawasa are accused of handling the tusks, estimated at a street value of 1.9 million shillings. The two denied the charges and were released on a cash bail of 200,000 shillings each. Edith Kimani, KTN Prime.
You are indeed watching KTN Prime on this 13th day of May 2013 with me, Eric Njoka.
And Linda Gutu, thank you so much for staying with us this far. We're taking a short break. Joy Doreen Bira is up next with the day's business news, but let's take a look at what she has in store for you.
Sports today will tell you the prospects of world record holder Patrick Macau, and has Mike Friday been fired as the Kenya Sevens coach, more on Bamburi Super Cities, and of course the Kenya Premier League standings. All that on KTN Sports today.
Public appointment approval process is not a witch hunt. It is unfortunate. Kenyans are used to witch hunting and calling others names. You know, that is not what we are supposed to do. Remember, this is a first in Kenya. It hasn't happened before. We can't afford to set bad manners in the name of hand tackling. Even hand tackling sometimes is ruled as being foul, even in football and rugby. If that's what Kenyans expected us to do, that's not what we expect them to do.
The beginning of a new week. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. Let's do business. The 25 years concession could be reviewed if the cabinet nominee for transport and infrastructure, Engineer Michael Kamau, has his way. Speaking during his vetting process last week, Kamau said the government had so far not seen the value of the concession 7 years on. Here are the details.
In 2006, after several years of lull at Kenya Railways, the government of Kenya agreed to a 25-year concession with a consortium of investors operating under the Rift Valley Railways umbrella. The scope of the agreement was for RVR to run the 2,352-kilometer Kenya-Uganda railway line and operate cargo business, as well as a 5-year contract for the passenger unit. 7 years later, it seems the government is not happy with the deal. According to Cabinet nominee Engineer Michael Kamau, who also has been the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Roads, RVR has not fulfilled its mandate and the state can do without it.
I'm one of the people who have suffered from the operations of the port under the Ministry of Transport. The Ministry of Transport right now carries only 3.4% of all the goods from the port of Mombasa. Everything comes on the road, and then we are left with the issues of overloading, and we are made to look bad.
From his records, the cabinet nominee said that cargo business under the concession had dropped from a previous 15% to only 3% currently. This, he noted, showed a disconnect with the government's expectations with the deal. Under the concession agreement, the government of Kenya can terminate the deal if RVR fails to meet terms of the pact, including performance and fees payments. However, this is not the first time threats of cancelling the concession have surfaced. In January this year, there were reports that the Kenya Railway Corporation, which oversees the concession on behalf of the government, wrote to RVR informing it that it did not pay $10.9 million in concession fees arrears and therefore was planning to terminate the deal. Joseph Bonyo, KTN Business Today.
And the central bank has licensed yet another microfinance institution to offer deposit-taking services to customers. The licensing of UNI deposit-taking microfinance makes it the 9th MFI in 2 years to be granted capacity to take in customer deposits. This underscores the importance the regulator places on microfinance institutions to grow small and medium enterprises in the country. Other institutions to be granted deposit-taking capabilities include Faulu Kenya, KWFT, Remu Rafiki, Century and Sumac. The central bank has been at the forefront of developing an all-inclusive financial system that reduces impediments to accessing finance, including SME financing. UNI DTM will be located along River Road, which is a hotbed for entrepreneurs within Nairobi looking to grow their businesses. This is likely to take the fight to the doorsteps of commercial banks that over the last 5 years have been dashing to get a slice of the booming SME sector. Now, moving on to more business, the country must scale up the growth and development of its financial services if hopes to achieve the dreams enshrined in the Vision 2030 economic blueprint are to come true. The long-term plan is hinged on economic performance that must swell to meet the demands of a rising population. We have more.
Take off if it can capitalize on the available opportunities brought about by a shift in investor attitudes towards the continent.
By 2017, Africa will be the 5th largest economy after United States, China, Japan, and Germany.
Kenya, being the hub of the East African region and being strategically located no more than 4 hours away from any major African city and less than 8 hours from the world's main financial centers, could gain huge impetus from this.
It's the gate into Tanzania, it's the gate to Uganda, it's the gate to Sudan, it's a gate to Central Africa, and it's a gate to Southern Africa. A total market of 1 billion people.
But to achieve growth, the country must reduce the cost of lending to customers and minimize the risks banks face when lending. The government must also deal with GDP leakages that are eating up 600 billion shillings or 20% of the GDP every year.
Sealing that leakage, our economy will grow by a further 1.2%. So instead of the 4% differential, for us to reach the double-digit growth that is required, all we'll have to do, all we'll be thinking about is 2 to 2.8% rather than 4% to get a double-digit growth.
The region should also entrench trading blocs such as the East African Community so as to increase intra-African trade. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business Today.
And at 83.75 buying and 83.95 selling to the dollar, not a good start for the Kenya shilling. The traders are optimistic the currency will regain strength in the course of the week. Let's take a look at the financial markets and also a look at the listed companies' performance at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And that's it that we had for you tonight on Business. Let's do business again tomorrow. Coming up is Nicholas Mudimba with KTN Sport Today. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. Have a good night.
I'm Nicholas Mudimba. World marathon record holder Patrick Macau has not lost his bid to be in Moscow for the World Championship in August. Macau, who is a recruit at the AP Police College, finished third during the Forces Championships today at the Nyayo Stadium and says he will attempt to qualify during the national trials for the World Championships. Coincidentally, Peter Mutai, who paced Macau to break the world record in Berlin, won today's 10,000 meters race. Joshua Kembai reports from the Nyayo Stadium.
When Athletics Kenya named a provisional squad from which the final team of 6 men will be picked to represent the country at the World Championships in Moscow, Russia in August, the name of world record holder Patrick Macau was missing. But the fastest man in marathon running is trying other means to be at the World Championships, though not to compete in his specialty. The recruit at the Administration Police Training College was among the 10,000 meters competitors during the Forces Championships at the Nyayo National Stadium on Monday. Here he came up against the man who helped him break the world record in Berlin, Peter Mutai. Mutai, however, was stronger from the start to win the race in 29 minutes and 15 seconds. Macau, who stayed with the leading pack, could not contain challenge from Henry Chirchir, second 3 seconds behind Kirui. Macau was timed at 29 minutes and 31 seconds. The world record holder now says the 10,000 meter slot in Moscow is his project.
If I'll manage to run very well, and maybe I qualify for the national team, it will be something good for me.
His pacemaker and the winner here, Peter Kirui, is preparing for a real battle during the nationals, though he says Monday's race was purely for gauging his speed ahead of many races he has identified.
Now, maybe I'm focused to be among those who are representing Kenya in Moscow. If all goes on well, then I'll be happy to participate for the World Championships.
Joshua Kemboy, KTN Sports Today.